Hello and welcome to tonight's session. I am Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert, and I want to share with you something that led me to talk about this starting over stronger. So I'm going to read to you a chapter that I wrote a couple of years ago about this circumstance, and that'll give you a bit of background on how and why I know what I do and I bring to the table what I do. So it's called Chapter 1, The Bomb Drops. Saturday morning, I rolled out of bed, still weary from the day before, and put on whatever clothes decency required. Our son had just come home after a bad breakup and was waiting to hear about a job in another province while he figured out his next move. So decency was definitely required. Riley greeted me as I slowly climbed the stairs to the kitchen. So tired. Just a few more days. His little black nub of a tail with a copper tuft at the end vibrated almost as fast as the wings of a hummingbird, and I'm sure his whole body wiggled with excitement to see me. I scooped out the dog food and poured it into his bowl, then filled the water reservoir and made myself a cup of coffee. Coffee would be needed today. Just 9 days until my income tax deadline, and I'd been working crazy hours for months, but the end was finally in sight. Just a few more days. In 2 hours, a new client was coming to drop off his papers, so a quick coffee and jump in the shower, plenty of time to get ready. My husband was sitting on the couch, so I walked over and gave him a kiss and hug, said good morning, and opened the blinds to let the early morning sunshine in. When I asked if he wanted to go see a movie that night, the bomb dropped. In all honesty, I don't remember everything he said. I feel like a conversation of that magnitude should be burned into your memory somehow. But perhaps it's a kindness that it's not. I know the timing sucks, but there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about. I'm not happy. It was a mistake to come back. I'll always love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore. It's somehow amazing to me that it took about 30 seconds to destroy everything we'd built over the last 3 decades. But I suppose the things that have the most impact always do, don't they? I'd lost a sister in a car crash a few years earlier, and it was a similar feeling of both comprehension and disbelief in the exact same second. I must not have heard that right. Wait, could I have heard that right? Oh my God. Breathe. Just keep breathing. I didn't drink my coffee. Instead, I grabbed a towel and got into the shower. In our very short conversation, it was decided that he would leave that day. Of course, he already had someplace to go. And I needed to somehow figure out how to concentrate on my work. Just a few more days. I couldn't allow the fact that my life as I had known it had just burnt to ash at my feet to affect my clients. If I missed the deadline, there were very real financial consequences for them and for me, so I had to figure out how to focus. Just a few more days. When I'd showered and dressed, I went to my office and removed my rings. There was nothing more to talk about. The decision was made, and there was simply nothing left to fight for. How was I going to get through and maintain my focus? A friend called and delivered love and kindness, thank God. She said, "You now know without any doubt that you gave him and your marriage everything you had, Jackie. You can find peace in that." She was right. Through my tears, I said, "I'm just trying to figure out how to get everything done and get through to my deadline. How am I going to do that?" Her response was simple and brought so much ease. "You're going to lean. You have a lot of people who love you, so you're going to ask for help and you're going to allow yourself to receive it. We've got you and you've got this." Thank God for people who know us inside and out and make the choice to love us anyway. So that happened on April 21st, 2018. And that is what led to the last couple of years, me going through a very difficult divorce and to creating the program to help other people, especially women who are walking through these sorts of circumstances, and especially at midlife, because at midlife, we've got so many things going on for us, don't we? There's often menopause and health concerns. There are kids that are flying the coop and going out on their own, or maybe they're still at home with us for some reason. There are often elderly parents that we're also helping to look after. And when you've got a business to run on top of all of those things, financial concerns, the pressures, the lawyers and the legal stuff and all of that, it can be incredibly overwhelming. And we also have to leave some space for the heartbreak and the pain and the whatever emotions that can look like. It can be feelings of betrayal. It can be feelings of anger and sadness and grief and all of those sorts of things all rolled up into a great big ball. So it's important for us to look for support, to accept help, as my friend said to me that day, to accept the help that's there for us. It's important for us to get clear on who's around us. There are a lot of little details. So what I did was I created this program that's called 5 Stages of Starting Over. And if you would like some more information, I'm just going to let you know that we are doing a summit called the Starting Over Summit next Thursday, October 7th, from noon to 5 Eastern time. And I've got a bunch of other speakers. I'll give you a bit more information about that later after we get through the content part. But we will be going live with myself and a bunch of other experts, and we'll be talking about our experiences and what we've learned and are able to share with other people to offer support and guidance. So the 5 stages of starting over starts at exactly that moment, the ground zero moment. Now, when we're talking about ground zero, I've picked that language for a very good reason, because what happens is that we are now in a place where our life is completely blown up in front of us. So that often, especially when you get to this stage, we've been together for 27 years. So when you get to that stage and that point in your life and you're still with somebody, maybe even if you're in a newer relationship, but when you're still with someone, that person I had been with for more than half my life at that point. So what do you do now? Where do you go now? Who am I now? Now, when I found out about the other woman, I will tell you that my feelings went from anger and confusion into a whole different level. And what that caused for me was I felt fat, I felt old, I felt unattractive, and I felt unworthy. Those were the feelings that were showing up for me. So what happened was I had to take those pieces apart and begin to understand the messaging. So my specialty is what I call the subliminal soundtrack, the messaging that was going on in the back of my head that was causing me to feel those things. So the fact of the matter is that when one spouse leaves for somebody different, it very often has very little to do with the spouse that's left behind. It is very often, especially when we get to midlife, it is very often about the person who makes that choice and their feelings or their thoughts or whatever they're struggling with at that point in their life. So to pick that up and own that is really a big mistake. But those were my feelings. It hit me in all those little tender places that, the fat girl who wore glasses and got teased relentlessly at school, all of those things. Do you see what I'm saying? It's all of those pieces of our past. And I call it dancing with our demons. Call it that for a very good reason, because usually when we're talking about something that's very difficult, it's very deeply rooted in our heart or in our body. When we're talking about those things, they come up because we need to deal with them. So how do we do that? We dance with them. We need the information that they have so that we can start to focus our attention on that place in us that needs to be healed. So we dance with them, and we do that in a way that allows us to remain in control.
On a scale of 1 to 5, would you give yourself a 5 on achieving what you want in life? If your answer is anything less than a 5, right now, I have something awesome for you. Achieving your goals and living your life at a 5 isn't easy. Most people aren't prepared to focus, stay disciplined, and do the everyday work that is necessary to achieve amazing results. But since you're watching this, then I'm guessing that you're not one of those people. And this is an opportunity that will change your life. Give to Get is a global program that brings together world-class coaching and combines it with empowering masterminds and networking opportunities. We provide 5-star guidance for the price of a cup of coffee a day. To find out more, click on the link in the description of this coaching session.
Because if you're not careful, those voices in the back of your head that tell you those things, I'm fat, I'm old, I'm unattractive, and I'm unworthy of love. If you're not careful, those things will take you out. Those are big, bad uglies. And if you're not careful, they will take you out. But when you learn to dance with them, what you do is you go, okay, so I'm fat. What is that about? What is that about? And where do I need to heal myself about that thing? And we go through the list. So I want to share with you sort of the process that I went through. And I want to be really clear. So I've called it 5 stages. It's not really about, okay, so here's my list. Stage 1, done, check it off, move to stage 2. There is a fluidity in the healing process as we go through this. And we can very often find ourselves right back at the beginning again. Now, take heart, because that doesn't mean that you're starting over again. It means that another piece has shown up that you get to deal with. So this is a good thing. It really is a good thing. I know it probably doesn't sound like it, but it is a good thing. So ground zero. What does ground zero look like? Just for a second, I want you to picture a war movie or something like that where you've seen a bombed out city. So there's rubble everywhere. There's rubble everywhere. And there are people inside the rubble. They're trying to figure out how to create a new home or whatever the case may be. The thing of it is they can only do that for so long. So while the safety is still a concern, they're probably going to find a little hidey hole somewhere and hole up there. But once you get to the place where the shock waves are done, the explosion has happened, it is very necessary for you to start to sort through all of those pieces of rubble. What do you find there? You're going to find all of those pieces of your former self and of your former life. So imagine that you are standing in the middle of a pile of rubble that was your life. We pick up the pieces and we start to look at, is this something that serves me to carry forward into my life? Or is this something that I'm going to drop and leave it here? These are some of the things that we need to work through. So step one of this ground zero place is clearing the rubble. So it's very important for us to identify where we are right now. Financially, especially, can be a big concern, especially under the circumstances that I was facing. He left and he started his new life and left me with all of the responsibilities. And that's not an unusual thing. So where do you live? Is this a place that you can afford to continue to live? What do you have to fall back on? Where does your income come from? Is it enough to support you? Or do you need to, maybe you need to take another job, maybe you need to get a side hustle. What do you need? Is it a situation where maybe the spouse is being responsible and helping to take care of those responsibilities, or maybe you're on your own? These are the things that we need to get really, really clear about. Identify where you're at right now. When you get to a point where the legal system becomes involved, it's going to be very important for you to know where your money's at. And in some cases, I'm sure you've heard of them. Maybe you are them. I don't know. But in some cases, the person who's left behind has absolutely no idea. They don't know about the bank accounts. They don't know about the bills. They don't know about the companies or the account numbers or where are the important papers. So if you're in that position, I'm going to strongly encourage you to find someone in your circle, in your team, in your tribe. Find someone who understands these things and ask them to come in and help you. It's probably not as hard as it looks right in the beginning, especially when you have someone who can support you and help you figure those things out. When my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law didn't know how to write a check. So these are the kinds of things that we may need support. And if you need support, please ask for it. I want to be really clear about this. It is not other people's responsibility to figure out where you need help and step in. It is your responsibility to take care of yourself. Okay, so the help will be there, or you can hire somebody. You can always hire somebody if you don't have anybody in your crew. Find someone to help you sort through those things, especially the financial stuff and the living situation. Can you afford to keep living where you are? Do you need to move? Is it a matrimonial home? Is it a rental? What are the obligations? How are things tied up? So we got to get clear on where you are right now. That is our first step. Step 2 in ground zero, making the plan. So where do I go from here? This one, I'm going to share with you the story that caused this one to happen. I do some energy healing work, and a friend of mine had come over. She actually had been diagnosed with cancer, and she came over one day so that I could do some of this energy work for her. The plan was that we were going to work on her pain management and doing what we could to help with that thing. And what happened was I hadn't done that kind of thing for a very long time. And when she left, I found myself in this space of, wow, oh, this feels so good. This feels so good to be in this space and knowing that I had just helped someone that I loved. It felt so good. And so what that led me to was this, like, what is this about? And how can I bring more of this feeling good into my world? Because honestly, you can imagine my world was not very comfortable for a little while. So how can I bring more of this feels so good? And I've been of service to someone that I love. And what that brought me to was that I had coached before that. And inside the marital relationship, it really didn't make a whole lot of sense for me to continue doing so. So I'd sort of let that slide and focused on my accounting business. So what ended up happening was I started to sort of have this feeling like, well, wow, you felt good when you did that. So I reached out to friends that had been part of my coaching practice before, people that had become friends through the coaching practice, and so on. And I reached out to a bunch of these people and I said to them, can you just tell me what happened for you as a result of what we did together? And every single person, every single one of them said, Jackie, it changed my life. So I started to give that some serious thought. And the final place that I arrived at was understanding that the decisions that I had made inside that marriage were decisions that were made for a life that I no longer had. Feel that for a second. If you are in this position, you will understand how that feels. That life is now over. It's important for you to understand that, to get clarity on that as much as you can, as quickly as you can. And then start to think about, where do you go from here? What are things that you used to enjoy doing? What could you do to bring in the work or the relationships or whatever it is that make you happy, that bring you to a more peaceful space? What could you do to bring those things in? Maybe it's that you're going to make a date night with a friend. So once a week, you're going to go and have dinner and a couple of drinks, or watch a movie together, or whatever it is, go for a walk. I don't know, whatever works for you. So how can you bring those feelings of connection, those feelings of importance, those feelings of worth into your world to combat some of those feelings that are happening because of your circumstances? So step 3 is rebuilding. This part is where we start to think about, okay, who am I now? Who am I without that person, without that relationship, without that context? Who am I? This one came to me. I was actually doing a photo shoot or with a friend of mine, and she's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So we had a conversation before, we had a coffee and a conversation before we started. And she has this thing that she calls life messages. So her name is Lori Goodman. She is in, I think, Guelph, Ontario. She is brilliant. Look her up, Lori Goodman Photography, if you're looking for someone who can really capture you. It's brilliant. So she gave me this piece of Bristol board. It's a blue one. And she said, I want you to write on this whatever your first thought is, because that's the context of the photo shoot. And so what came out of me was surprising. What I started to understand was that for a very long time, I had identified myself as that person's Jackie. I was his Jackie. And that day, what I decided was that I was nobody's Jackie but my own. So what I wrote on that card, which surprised me and led to that thought process, was I'm Jackie's Jackie. I am Jackie's Jackie. I am no longer going to be his or anyone else's anything. I am going to now take back my power and become who I was born to be. So these are the kinds of things that you are working through as you are sorting through the rubble and clearing things away from your ground zero. It's very important for us to clear them away. So be purposeful in the ones that we pick back up and purposeful in the ones that we throw away. Because for me to remain in the role of his Jackie was not helpful. It was not comfortable. And it would not help me to move forward into the life that I needed to create on my own. So, who do you want to be? Who would you like to be? Picture this ground zero place as just a blank canvas. Who would you like to be? Would you like to go back to school? Would you like to have a new career? Would you like to volunteer somewhere? Would you like to have a new relationship? Would you like to take belly dancing classes? What would you like to do? Who do you want to be? Very important for you to get clear on this, because especially when we get to this phase in our life, we only have so much time left. So do you want to waste that trying to be somebody else's something? Or do you want to start to bring the people into your world who love you for exactly who and what you are? No judgment here, but it's a question that's important to ask yourself. All right, so stage two. Stage two of the 5 stages of starting over. If you don't heal what hurt you, you'll bleed on people who didn't cut you. I'm sure you've probably seen that. I've seen it all over Facebook and other social media. It's a brilliant, brilliant saying. So what we're doing on this stage is we are really working on healing the places in our heart that are broken, healing the things that are being triggered by this new circumstance, because they're very likely things that have gone back further than this circumstance or this breakup or whatever it is. Very likely some of these things go back way before that. Some of them might even go back to your childhood. So we're working on the healing process so that we can come to this place of wholeness, because we don't want to harm other people, because we are coming from a place of pain. So first step of stage 2 is victim no more. Now this one I talk about all the time, and it's not the most popular thing for people to hear from me. I call it radical personal responsibility. So we all have a certain amount of responsibility. We're not talking about fault. We're not talking about blame. We are talking about responsibility. It's important for us to understand what we brought to the table that may have contributed to turbulence or difficulties or lack of communication or whatever the circumstance was. You could even put this in a job situation. Your responsibility is to show up ready to work at the time that you're supposed to be there and do your very best to do your job. That's your responsibility. Did you show up late all the time? That's your responsibility. So that's the part. What did you bring to the table? As I worked through this, I had to start to understand that there were things where I was the one who was responsible. Maybe I could have done this differently. Maybe I could have said that differently. Maybe this or maybe that, whatever it is. And I want to really be clear, this is not about fault or blame. This is about clarity. This is about self-examination. It is not about anything more than that. Now, when we get clear on this stuff, we also need to ask ourselves, in the current circumstances, how I'm behaving. Maybe there's a lawyer involved at this point. Is how I'm behaving right now helping or hindering? Is it helping this situation to get resolved, or is it causing it to be more difficult? These are important questions. Now, step 2 of stage 2, forgiving yourself. This part can be very difficult because it's hard for us to look in the mirror and understand that we brought something to this problem. That, you know, it's easier to look outside ourselves, and believe me, I had reason to look outside ourselves and say, oh, this is your fault, and this is your fault, and this is your fault. Absolutely, I had reason. Would it help me to do that? No. So it was necessary for me to get honest with myself, to get clear about the things that I had contributed to the situation, and to forgive myself for those things. One of the things that I arrived at was that I had allowed certain things to occur and to continue in that relationship. I had not honored myself terribly well in that relationship for a number of years. And that was one of the things that I had to forgive myself for. One of the things to remember is that you did the best you could at the time. With the tools that you had, you did the very best that you could at the time. All right. So again, we are not beating ourselves up. We are looking at these circumstances from an objective place, understanding what we brought to the table, and then working toward forgiving ourselves for whatever that was. Step 3 is forgiving the other parties. This one's also not so easy. And if you haven't already heard this, I want to help you understand that forgiveness has almost nothing to do with the other person. This was a thing that I got very confused for a long time. You know, there was this like Bible teachings when I was young, and it was forgive and forget, right? And turn the other cheek, and all of that kind of stuff. So somehow that got pretty confusing in my head. And what happened was I came to sort of have this belief system around forgiving others, that if I forgave them, then I was making it okay. Whatever they had done, I was making it okay. And I was giving them a free pass. And where this had become a problem for me was that operating in that way had caused me to allow people to continue to cause those sorts of problems for me. Oh, okay, you hurt me. That's fine. I forgive you. And then they come back in and do it again. Oh, I forgive you. And then they come back in and do it again. Maybe that's happened to you, or you know someone that's happened to as well. So the forgiveness piece is very important because it has nothing to do with them. It's not about giving them a free pass. What it's about is laying down your feelings, laying down the importance of this piece or this person or whatever it is. We lay it down because if we don't, we will carry that on our backs into our future. We will carry that on our backs into our new relationships. And we've all seen this before, haven't we? We get into a new relationship with somebody who's wonderful, but because we're still behaving and speaking as we may have done before, we drag that stuff into that new relationship, and it can potentially ruin something that could be really wonderful. So we want to heal this stuff. We want to take our time, heal this stuff. Don't jump into a new thing until you've done some of this work, because you don't want to hurt somebody that isn't responsible for the pain. You don't want to hurt somebody that just wants to love you. All right. So we forgive ourselves, we forgive the other people, and we lay it down. Now, again, we can find ourselves sort of going back and forth in any number of these things, depending on the circumstances, depending on how ugly things get, depending on how other people behave or how you behave. We can find ourselves moving back and forth between these stages, and that's okay. So now we're going to move on to stage 3. Stage 3 is all about taking care of business. So this is where we figure out what do we need to do to tie this thing up and put it behind us. So maybe it's a lawyer. Maybe you need to find a lawyer. Maybe you need to find a mediator. Maybe you need to find a counselor. Maybe you need to find a coach. Whatever it is that you need, figure out the places in your life that there's an other and someone else, somebody, maybe even outside of your circle. Because, often with our family members, they have feelings about the whole situation too. Maybe they're not able to be objective, or your friends. It's hard for them to see a person they love who is heartbroken. And if you love somebody, I'm sure you can understand that. It's a hard thing to watch somebody walk through a difficult point in their life, and there's very little you can do to help them. So think about that. Maybe you're lucky like I am, and you have a tribe that's full of brilliant, wonderful, strong people who will step up and support you. Maybe you need to fill those gaps with other people. Okay. So figure out where you're at, what you're dealing with. Is it a divorce? Is it a situation where, what do you call that? With common law people, with common law partners, the laws aren't quite so clear. Maybe you need some legal advice even under those circumstances. But what are you dealing with? It could even be, a death of a spouse. It could be that a pandemic has blown up the world and your business is gone. It could be any number of things. So figure out where you're at, what it is that you are currently dealing with. Could also be a life-altering illness. It could be any number of circumstances. So we want to get clear on where we're at and what do we need, what professionals do we need to come in to help us. Make a list of the resources, reach out to your friends and ask for referrals. Identify the support system, very important. Identify the support system and who can do what. So who are you going to call on for what? I had a brilliant, I have a brilliant friend. And when the legal papers would come in, of course, it was necessary for me to review the legal paperwork on my own, because if I had gone to my lawyer's office and asked him to help me review that paperwork, it would have cost me another $300 or $500 or whatever it was. So what happened was I have this really smart friend, and I would call her up and say, okay, I just got the paperwork. I'd go over there whenever we could work it out, and we would have tea and we would go through, and we literally would go through with red pens and markers and writing notes and all of that kind of stuff. So I always made sure that I printed off 2 copies, one for her to one for her to make her notes and one for me to make my notes. So that is something that was her job. And then I had another friend who was the place that I would go when my heart was breaking. When I would have these moments of, oh my God, because even 2 years later, there was still a part of me that was like, wow, I can't actually believe that this person who has been part of my life for 27 years is gone. They're just gone. So we need to have that place. We need to know who is the right person to go to when we have a moment where we need just to be loved, just to be allowed to say whatever we need to say. It's very important for us to understand who is able to do that for us. I have one of my friends says to me, you can't go to the hardware store looking for a bag of bread or a loaf of bread. So we know that there are people in our world who are able to do certain things or unable to do certain things. So try to avoid going to the hardware store looking for a loaf of bread. Know who your people are, identify, and maybe even check with them and say, hey, I feel like I could use your support in this area. Is that okay with you? Because then you're bringing them in, then you're considering them, and then you're also giving them clear understanding of how they can support you because they love you. They want to support you. They may have absolutely no idea what to do. All right. So step 8. No, I'm sorry. That's going to be step, I don't know, whatever came next. Managing your stress and emotions. This is so very, very, very important because when our emotions get carried away, and I will tell you, especially under these sorts of circumstances, the fact of the matter is they do. They do, and there's no way to avoid it. Sometimes you just blow your stack. Sometimes, you get this word on something that's happened and you're just like, oh my God. So it's important for us to once again go back and those people, call on those people to help you rein yourself in or to let you blow your stack and get it out of your system. Because when you bring that energy into a courtroom, you are not helping yourself. I promise you, you're not helping yourself. That judge, they don't care how you feel. They don't care what they did. They don't care. That is not what they're there for. They are there for, here's what we're dealing with. What do we have to do to resolve this and get it done? And they want to get it done as quickly as possible. So very important for you to manage your stress and your emotions. Also, it can take a toll. It can take a toll on your being and your body if you're not taking care of yourself. This is a stressful situation, regardless of whether it's a divorce, regardless of whether it's the death of someone you love, regardless of whether it's that you've lost your business or any other kind of a traumatic situation. You and your body are under stress. That's the truth. So you can do things to help you manage that stress and manage that emotion. One of the things that worked really well for me was walking or going to the gym. And when I was going to the gym, it was funny because I could actually feel sometimes when I was really, really not happy, I could feel that working its way through. And then by the time I left the gym, I felt good again. So these are some of the things. And also, what about having some fun? What about having some fun? I signed up for belly dancing classes. I'd wanted to do it for years. And so under these circumstances, I found a whole bunch of friends who also wanted to learn how to belly dance. And we all signed up together. So we had a class just with us. And it was a blast. It was great exercise. It was fun. It got me away from my house. It got me out doing something with my friends that we could enjoy together. So that's the part of this, your self-care. Maybe you need to take a hot bath or read a book or get a babysitter, whatever it is. You know the things that help you to feel calmer. You know the things that help you to feel filled up again. And that's what we're going for. All right. So take care of yourself, figure out what you need to do to manage your stress and emotions and lean on your people when you can't. Now, our next step is taking action. This one, unleash your inner powerhouse. This is what I call this, unleash your inner powerhouse. You are stronger than you realize, and you have to do what's right for you. One of the things that is a hard adjustment for some of us to make is that this person, whoever they are, this person has no longer got your back. They no longer have your back. It is your responsibility to take care of your needs and to make sure that you get out of this whatever it is that you need to get out of this. All right. This is your responsibility. They no longer have your back. You're on your own. You have your team. Hopefully, you've got some legal representation that is good legal representation that will tell you the truth and not just, bleed you dry. It's very important. Do your best to keep it classy. Do your very best to keep it classy, at least on your end. We can't control what other people say or do. We can't control that, but what you're bringing into it is your concern. So do your very best to, we hear people talk about rise above. Keep it classy. It doesn't help anybody for you to get down on the ground and roll around in the muck with other people. It doesn't matter how cruel they're being. It doesn't matter what they're saying or what they're doing. All of that is none of your business. Also, a big thing to shift your mindset from whatever's going on in that person's life is none of your business anymore. Okay? Know when to stop fighting. This one was difficult. This part was difficult for me because, we have these, and this is why it's so important to manage those emotions. We have those feelings of woundedness, those feelings of justifiable anger. Do you understand where I'm going with this? We have those feelings. And so we go, well, I'm entitled to this, or I'm entitled to that, or no, you don't get to do that. You see what I'm saying? No, you don't. You are not allowed to do that. Well, we can't control what other people do. Sometimes it's very, very important for us to consider, what's it going to cost me to make that happen? Is it going to be worth whatever cost this is, physical, emotional, financial, whatever the case may be? Is it going to be worth the money? If you are in a position where there's $5,000 on the table and it's going to cost you $15,000 to get that 5,000, do the math. Does it make sense? Do you need to be right that much? Is it worth $15,000 for you to be right? That's something you need to consider. You need to consider that there needs to be, we call it ROI in business, right? Return on investment. So if I'm going to throw $20,000 at this thing, what's going to come back my way? We need to be logical. We need to be logical about this thing. All right. So now we start to get into the lighter stuff. So stage 4, we're at stage 4. Stage 4 is it's time. So it's time to let go. It's time to start looking toward the life that you are moving in the direction of. So you've already released, hopefully you've already released all of the old life, all of the baggage, all of the really difficult emotions. Hopefully you've already worked through them, at least mostly. And then you start to think about, okay, what do I want? What would I like my life to look like? And this is where we really start. We were considering it before, but now we're actually starting to maybe take action, at least moving in that direction. So maybe you thought, well, maybe I should become a family lawyer. They make a lot of money, right? Maybe I should become a family lawyer. But now you're going to actually start to go, okay, so what's required? What do I need to do to make that happen? And of course, then you're going to have a conversation about, like, does it make sense for me to go in that direction? But what do you want? Do you want to stay in the home that you lived in? Do you want to move to a different city? Do you want a brand new life? I've known people that have literally picked up their entire lives and moved to a new city just because they didn't want to be there anymore. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Starting with a brand new, fresh, clean slate where nobody knows your story, nobody knows your heartbreak and your all of that stuff, that can be really healing. It can be wonderful to do that. So what do you want? Do you want a new career? Do you want a new life? Are you comfortable staying where you're at? Do you want to switch gears in your business or career? Do you want to, what do you want? Do you want to start to travel? The whole idea of this is now we're actually going to look at that blank canvas that we talked about before, and we're actually going to start painting on it. What do you want? This is very exciting. It can also be one of the places where people really get stuck. We need to start to perceive ourselves completely as a brand new person. We need to start to perceive our lives as a completely new life. As long as you're holding on to that identity, that person, that relationship, that whatever it is, as long as we are still walking forward with those things in it, like picture a backpack. As long as we're walking forward, we're weighing ourselves down. And again, we are carrying that crap into this beautiful new future that's just waiting for you. So we've got to let that stuff go. Start to get clear and play with it. Maybe this is where you think, hey, I'd like to take some belly dancing classes. That sounds like fun. This is where you start to experiment. Who are you at this stage in your life? Do you want to be somebody who's a little bit more fun to be around? That might be nice. That might be nice. So what about laughter yoga? Or what about going and learning a new hobby or playing a new sport? I used to love baseball when I was younger, so I went out and bought myself a glove. I'd lost my glove 20 years ago, but I went out and bought a new glove. Do you see what I'm saying? What do you want to bring into your world? Perceive that this entire thing is full of endless possibilities, and it's completely up to you what you choose. And if you don't like it, throw it back and grab something else. Do you see what I'm saying? This part can be so very exciting. You need to release the past to get here. But when you do, and you start to move forward, man, it can be so much fun. It can be so much fun. So get your sass on. Isn't that a fun way to talk? Get your sass on. I started to perceive this, and not everybody is necessarily going to be a sassy person. I personally am, but I started to perceive myself from this place of like, ooh, those hips are swaying, embodying that femininity that I had lost touch with before that. Do you see what I'm saying? So maybe that's something that you've also experienced. Maybe you've lost touch with your masculinity, your femininity, whatever it is. Maybe you've lost touch with that, and it might be fun to play with that again. Pull it out. Pull it out and try on maybe different, like you'd try on different outfits. Try on different, what feels good for me. Get your sass on. Whatever that looks like for you. That's what we're working on in that step. Be playful. Use your self affirmations. So this is where you are going to really do battle with some of those things that are going on in the back of your head. Challenge them. Challenge them with the truth. And if you need help with that, I'm definitely a person that can help you with that stuff, because that's what I work on with people, the subliminal soundtrack. So be proud of yourself is the last thing that I want to cover on this. At this phase in things, you're pretty much through the worst of it. So allow yourself the time to look back on everything that you have been through, everything that you have accomplished. Have you managed to survive without that person and you didn't even know how you were going to do it? And now it's 3 or 5 years later and you're like, I don't know how I did it, but I did. Be proud of you. Whatever your accomplishments are, be proud of the direction that you're going. Be proud of your people and the fact that they want you in their lives because they love you, not because you have anything specific to give them, but because they see you and they honor you and they believe in you. Be proud of you. Now, this is our last stage. So we're at stage 5 here. Stage 5 is moving forward. We are really taking action at this point. So there is a Steve Harvey book. It's called Jump. And this story, it's written sort of with a religious flair. So if you're somebody who isn't very comfortable with that, I would encourage you to get a feel for the story, even without the religious part. So he comes at it from the point of, we are right on the edge. We are standing on the edge of the cliff. So perceive yourself standing on the edge of the cliff. Now you can stay there and nobody's going to judge you. Nobody's going to judge you at all because they know what you've been through, right? Or you can decide to take a leap of faith and actually into this new being, this new way of life. It's your choice. But what Steve Harvey talks about in this book, and actually Bruce Cruikshank is with us right now, and I'm pretty sure that I saw a video with him that Steve Harvey did. He's the host of oh geez, Louise, Family Feud, one of the game shows anyway. Steve Harvey is the host of it, and he at the end, they still had the cameras rolling, and he did this speech at the end, and it is so moving. I would definitely look it up on YouTube if you need some motivation. He talks about that nothing is going to change as long as we are standing on the edge of the cliff. The only way for things to happen is for us to step off and take that chance. And everything good is waiting for you on the other side of taking that step off that cliff. Everything good is waiting for you there. The problem is that it can be pretty damn scary. It can be pretty scary to be standing on the edge of that cliff, trying to push yourself forward. So take a deep breath and go. Just take a deep breath and go. You are smart. You are strong. You are resilient. You are potent. You are so many amazing things. If you have survived all of this, there are depths within you that you have not even learned yet. You will figure this thing out. You must believe in yourself. Believe in yourself just enough to take that step off the cliff and allow yourself to fall into your beautiful new future. Fall into your beautiful new future. Eyes front. This one can be difficult. I'm not trying to say in any way, shape, or form that we shouldn't have moments where we reflect back on our life. But I will tell you really briefly a story that happened. We moved to Alberta. So I'm currently in Ontario. Alberta is several thousand miles away. And we moved there a long time ago. And I remember being in the hotel room. So it was my husband at the time, my son, who was an adult. We had a great big German Shepherd dog. And we were in a hotel room because we had left Ontario literally with what we could haul in a van and a car, the three of us and the dog. That was it. We had no place to go except a hotel room that was waiting on the other side. We had no jobs. We had nothing lined up. This was a jump moment. All right. We could have stood on the end of the cliff, but I couldn't do it anymore. I could not do it anymore. So we moved, we jumped. And one morning, I remember waking up in the hotel room, and there was this thought that had just sort of dropped into my head. How can you ever move forward if you are always looking behind you? If you are always looking at who you used to be, what the circumstances used to be, the work that you used to do, whatever it is, if you are always looking behind you, maybe there's shame that you're carrying. Maybe there's unresolved feelings of hurt or anger or whatever it is. As long as you're looking back there, you can't see what's in front of you. Eyes front, focus forward, focus on moving into that new life. Now, it's important for us to talk about failure at this point because sometimes we're going to fall flat on our faces, and that's okay. So when we perceive failure, I'm going to just ask you to consider it from a bit of a different place. When I perceive failure, I perceive learning. So I want you to think about a little baby who's just at that point where they're starting to creep around, they're pulling themselves up on the furniture, and they're starting to stand on their own. So when they fall flat on their bum, because they do we go, oh my God, he fell down again? Or do we go, oh, yay, Johnny, good job? We encourage them because we know that there is this thing called walking that requires a process of learning. And every single time Johnny hits the ground again, when he stands back up, he has a new learning. He has knowledge that he did not have before. He has knowledge about muscle control. He has knowledge about balance. He has knowledge about whatever other things are involved in this thing that we call walking. So each time Johnny stands back up, he does a little bit better. And we encourage him even when he falls. So what if you could look at yourself with that same grace and understanding? You are creating a new life for yourself. It's new territory. Maybe sometimes you fall flat on your face. That's okay. Do your best to fall forward a little bit further ahead. Take whatever learning you can from the situation. Take whatever learning you can and then move forward, because now you're not starting from zero. You're not starting from zero. You are starting with the knowledge and experience that you gained from that circumstance. So I have heard a statistic that they say that a rocket is off course 95% of the time. So think about that for a second. You've got the rocket that's on its way to the moon, and it maybe runs into a wind or a storm or something, and it gets pushed off course a little bit, but then it course corrects. And then it runs into something else and it goes off a little bit, and then it course corrects. So a rocket on its way to anywhere is off course 90 to 95% of the time. This is a perfectly normal thing for you. You have your idea of where you're going, and maybe you run into something that you have to go around. Maybe you run into a challenge that you've got to climb over. Whatever the case may be, it's very likely not going to be a straight line to get you there. So remember that a rocket is off course 90 to 95% of the time, and you will course correct just like they do. Pivot and course correct whenever you need to. So pay attention to where you're going. Pay attention to what's happening, what's working, what's not working. Maybe you're starting a new business and it's just not working, and you need to go and find somebody to give you some help or some training or whatever the case may be. So pay attention to what's happening. And if it really feels like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, that's okay too. You're allowed to change your mind. And again, I want to encourage you to look at these things from a place of learning. So now, as I've overcome each of these hurdles, and believe me, there have been a lot of hurdles over the last several years, as I've overcome each one of them, I have learned something that is now of value to help me move forward in a new direction toward the new life that I'm creating for myself. The world is your oyster. And remember, you have a blank canvas. It's up to you to paint this, to design this, however you choose. So thank you so much for being with me. Again, I am Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert. If you would like to hear more about this subject, we do have the Starting Over Summit next week on October 7th. It's going from noon to 7. Tickets are free. They are absolutely free. There is a VIP option for $27. You get all of the recordings, and we have several recorded sessions already. So there will be 6 of us live, and I think there's 13 or 14 recorded sessions from a bunch of other experts that they were so excited that we couldn't fit everybody in. So we created another option so that people could still get exposure to these brilliant minds and their expertise. There's also a VIP swag bag. I think the last time I looked, the value is somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 or 1,800. It's somewhere in that mark. So for $27, you get the swag bag, and you also get the recordings of the entire thing. So if you're at all interested in joining us for that, startingoversummit.com is the place to go to register. So again, thank you so much. I hope that I have shared something with you that has helped you to shift your perspective. And you can find me at jackiemott.com. You can find me on Facebook at Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert. Just reach out. I am so happy to help. If somebody finds themselves in these positions and would like a little bit of support, I'm here. Thank you again.